Wife asked for an open relationship. My revenge destroyed her. The idea, like so many of our modern marital innovations, was Chloe's. She presented it to me over a bottle of expensive Merlot on our pristine white balcony, the city lights twinkling below us like a fallen constellation. "It's not about a lack of love," she said, her voice smooth and persuasive, her hand resting on mine. "It's about an abundance of it. We're so secure, so solid. We can afford to be generous with ourselves, with each other. It's about expansion. I've built my life and career on logic and predictable outcomes, so naturally, I was hesitant. Our life was perfect, a carefully curated collection of successes. My thriving architectural firm, her blossoming art gallery, a chic apartment in a coveted high-rise, and a circle of friends who were the envy of our social set. We were a power couple, a unit. Why would I want to introduce a variable that could disrupt the entire equation? But Chloe can be incredibly persuasive. She painted a picture of a relationship unburdened by jealousy, one that embraced new experiences and trusted in the strength of our foundational bond. It was, she argued, the ultimate expression of trust. And so, because I love my wife more than the certainties I clung to, I agreed. We laid down rules, of course. No emotional attachments. Complete honesty. Our bed was sacrosanct. For a while, it worked. It felt like a novelty, a game for sophisticated adults. We had discreet dates, shared amusing anecdotes over breakfast, and found a new, almost illicit, spark in our own intimacy. I found the whole thing shallow, a series of brief, meaningless encounters that only reinforced how much I cherished what I had with Chloe. I assumed it was the same for her. I was wrong. The first sign was subtle, a shift in the tectonic plates of our relationship so minor I almost missed it. Chloe, who had always been an open book, became guarded. Her phone, once left carelessly on the coffee table, was now perpetually in her hand or her purse. The anecdotes about her dates dwindled, replaced by vague generalities. And then came Julian. His name was mentioned casually at first, an artist whose work she was considering for the gallery. Then he became a friend, then a fascinating soul she was spending more and more time with. Trusting, as I had promised to be, I initially thought nothing of it. But then I saw them together at a cafe one afternoon, a meeting Chloe had forgotten to mention. The way she looked at him, a soft, unguarded adoration that had once been reserved only for me, was a physical blow. I went home that day and, for the first time in our marriage, I violated Chloe's privacy. I went through her phone. The messages were a torrent of shared secrets, inside jokes, and declarations of a connection that was anything but casual. The words soulmate and love were thrown around with a sickeningly casual frequency. They had broken the most important rule. Chloe hadn't just expanded our relationship. She had built a new one in its shadow. The pain was a cold, hard knot in my chest. My first instinct was to confront her, to scream, to shatter the carefully constructed facade of our perfect life. But as I sat in the silence of our apartment, surrounded by the trappings of our shared history, a different feeling began to smolder beneath the pain, a cold, calculated rage. A confrontation would give her the satisfaction of a dramatic scene, the chance to play the tortured soul caught between two loves. I wouldn't give her that. I would give her something else entirely. My revenge began with a simple act of observation. I learned everything I could about Julian. He was a moderately successful sculptor, charming, and, as I discovered through a bit of discreet digging, in a long-term, committed relationship with a woman named Sarah. Sarah was a quiet, unassuming woman who ran a small, independent bookstore, the kind of place that was a relic of a bygone era. She was, in every way, the antithesis of Chloe. I started frequenting the bookstore. I would browse for hours, occasionally asking Sarah for recommendations. I was patient, charming in my own quiet way. I spoke of my love for classic literature, a passion I had long suppressed in my fast-paced, modern life. I never mentioned Chloe or our arrangement. I was just a man looking for a good book. Sarah, starved for intellectual companionship in a relationship that had clearly become one-sided, blossomed under my attention. We talked for hours, about books, about life, about our dreams. I learned that Julian was often distant, wrapped up in his art and his networking, leaving her to feel more like a roommate than a partner. I listened, offered a sympathetic ear, and slowly, carefully, built a foundation of trust. I never touched her. My revenge was not about infidelity. It was about something far more profound. It was about emotional connection, the very thing Chloe had stolen from me. The climax, as I planned it, was a dinner party at our apartment, a gathering of our closest friends. When Chloe, radiant and oblivious, insisted on inviting Julian, I knew my moment had come. "It's time everyone met him," she had said, a statement that was both a confession and a challenge. I agreed, then casually suggested, "Why don't you ask him to bring Sarah along? It would be lovely to finally meet her." Chloe, caught off guard, couldn't refuse without raising suspicion. And so, the stage was set. The evening was a masterclass in controlled tension. I played the part of the perfect host, attentive and charming. Chloe and Julian were a magnetic force, their connection a palpable energy that buzzed between them. Sarah, quiet and a little overwhelmed, stayed close to me, her only real friend in a room of strangers. The conversation eventually turned to art, to Julian's latest sculpture. He spoke with a practiced, pretentious passion about the raw emotion he poured into his work, the unfiltered truth he sought to express. "It sounds like you and Chloe have a very special connection," one of our friends commented, noticing the way Chloe was gazing at him. Chloe blushed, a picture of false modesty. "Julian is an inspiration," she said. I chose my moment. "Sarah was just telling me about the inspiration behind Julian's early work," I said, my voice calm and measured as I turned my warm gaze on her. "About the summers you spent in that little cottage by the sea, how the changing tides inspired his first collection. It sounds incredibly romantic." A hush fell over the table. Sarah looked at me with a grateful, surprised smile. Julian's face tightened, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. Chloe's smile faltered. A hush fell over the table. Sarah looked at me with a grateful, surprised smile. Julian's face tightened, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. Chloe's smile faltered. I continued, my voice weaving a narrative of a shared history, of intimate moments I had learned about from Sarah. I spoke of Julian's favorite books, his childhood fears, his dream of one day opening a small studio in the countryside. They were small, intimate details, the kind a person only shares with someone they trust, someone they love. They were details Julian had clearly not shared with Chloe. With every word, I was drawing a line in the sand, separating the deep, rich history of a long-term relationship from the shallow, narcissistic infatuation of an affair. I wasn't exposing a secret. I was illuminating a truth that had been hidden in plain sight. The final, killing blow was subtle. "You know," I said, my eyes finding Chloe's across the table, "Sarah and I have been talking about the idea of expansion in relationships. It's a fascinating concept, but what we've realized is that true expansion isn't about seeking something new, but about discovering the infinite depths of what you already have." I then reached out and gently squeezed Sarah's hand. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched Chloe's face become a mask of disbelief, her eyes darting between me and a suddenly pale Sarah. Julian looked trapped, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. Our other guests shifted uncomfortably, the unspoken drama hanging heavy in the air. I saw the understanding dawn on Chloe's face. She saw the entirety of my plan, the cold, calculated precision of my revenge. I hadn't just exposed her affair. I had shown her that her deep, spiritual connection with Julian was a cheap imitation of a real relationship. I had used our own rules against her, not by sleeping with another woman, but by forming a genuine emotional bond with her lover's partner. I had stolen the one thing she thought she owned, the narrative. I stood up, my expression unreadable. "If you'll excuse me," I said to the table, my voice steady, "I think I've lost my appetite." I walked out of the apartment, leaving behind the ruins of my marriage and the wreckage of 2 other lives. I didn't look back. The knot in my chest was gone, replaced by a cold, hollow emptiness. But in that emptiness, there was also a sense of victory. I had not only won the game, I had burned the entire board.